Warcraft. I became a Legion Traitor Introduction. Crossing to Azeroth, transforming into a Latitude Demon, Roy, backed by the Void, becomes a member of the Burning Legion. Good news. The Burning Legion is incredibly powerful, able to easily invade countless worlds, and its leader Sargeras is a powerful presence at the divine level. Bad news. It won't be long before the Legion is beaten to the doorstep, darkness. Chapter 1. The Wilderness of Demon Spy. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The warm sunshine awakened the sleeping earth, and with the arrival of dawn, a new day has arrived. This is Roy's 6th year in this city called Dalaran. When he first arrived, he was just an ordinary magic apprentice, but now he has become an official mage serving Kenrito. Roy is not unfamiliar with this world called Azeroth. Not only because of the invasion thousands of years ago, but also because of the memories of the world he lived in before. In that world, the world called Azeroth is just a planet in the game, a stage where players are active. As for why he came to this world, this kind of thing has been going on for too long and there is no need to pursue it. At this moment, he is a wizard serving Kenrito, at least on the surface. In fact, his true identity is a demon belonging to the Burning Legion, a spy lurking in Azeroth. His task is also very simple, which is to monitor the various movements of the mages in this city and report important parts to the superior in the Legion who is in charge of him. 10,000 years ago, the Legion experienced a disastrous defeat in this world. It is precisely because of this that in order to ensure the smooth progress of the next invasion, the wise fraudster Kil'jaeden in the Legion took a series of measures and attempts. Inserting spies into Azeroth's interior is one of many attempts. As a member of the Legion, Roy was unfortunately selected by Kil'jaeden, and after undergoing a series of tormenting training, he was thrown into this world. After arriving in this world, Roy occupied the body of a magical apprentice preparing to go to Dalaran, devouring his soul. He entered the human magic center as that person, this city called Dalaran. However, Roy doesn't want to just sacrifice his life for the Legion like this. He was well aware that in the near future, the second in command of the Legion, Archimonde and Kil'jaeden, would all die, and even the leader of the Legion, Sargeras, would be sealed by his brothers in the Pantheon. Perhaps the Burning Legion looks incredibly powerful now, but this is only the final glory of the Legion. To survive and continue sailing with the Legion, a ship that will soon capsize, is clearly not a good choice. There are only two things Roy can do to change this. Either use one's own memories of future generations to change the Legion and lead it towards victory. Either you leave the army and start your own business. Roy cannot lead the army towards victory. If he goes directly to Kil'jaeden or Archimonde to share his memories, being treated as a madman is nothing. It is more likely to be directly imprisoned by the second in command of this Legion, and then completely extract the things hidden deep in his soul. Although he came to this world and became a demon, Roy was not sure if the Legion had the ability to reach the universe he once lived in, to reach that world. But Roy doesn't want to become a traitor, at least not a traitor to the world he once lived in, and at the same time, he doesn't want to experience the eternal torment from Kil'jaeden. Naturally, this road was abandoned directly by Roy. So, the only choice he can make is to betray the Legion and stand opposite it. Of course, it's not the time yet, he can only temporarily hibernate. Roy left his residence in a rental apartment located in the Dalaran commercial district. Even though he has become an official mage and still serves Kenrito, it is still extremely difficult for Roy to buy a property in Dalaran. But Roy believes that his future is bright. After all, as a traveler, he holds more than just memories from past lives. After experiencing the refinement of the Legion, he has a far greater ability and will than ordinary people. After briefly organizing his appearance, Roy walked towards his office location. During his apprenticeship, Roy was selected by the renowned Lich of Azeroth and one of the high-ranking members of the current Council of Kenrito Mages, Kel'Thuzad. Even after becoming an official mage, Roy remained in the Mage Tower of Kel'Thuzad. Kel'Thuzad did not interfere with the choice of this former apprentice. After all, a formal mage is much more useful than a bunch of mage apprentices, and to some extent, he does need a student, at least in name. Roy walked on the streets of Dalaran as usual. However, before he could walk much further, he noticed two special lines of sight, which made him somewhat uneasy. Did those hunters still discover me? Roy couldn't help but think of it this way. However, on the surface, reading www.uukangshu.net didn't show anything unusual. He still arrived outside the Mage's Tower in Kel'Thuzad in a slightly scattered manner, as he had in the past. However, just as he was about to enter the Mage's Tower, one hand stopped him, and at that moment, Roy finally saw the appearance of the newcomer clearly. Perhaps in order not to affect Roy's reputation as a wizard, the two guards of Kenrito who have been tracking him since just now did not approach Roy directly. They didn't appear until they approached the Mage's Tower in Kel'Thuzad and came to Roy's side. What is the matter with me, an ordinary wizard, that the famous Kenrito magician's guardians are looking for? Don't ask too much, don't think too much. If someone wants to see you, please come with us. Listening to the words of the two Kenrito guards, Roy fell silent for a moment. After some contemplation, he ultimately chose to keep up with each other. Roy naturally has the ability to escape the pursuit of the two in front of him, but then what? If he really did that, all his time in business would be in vain. It's not the result he wants. He doesn't have time to build a new identity and slowly reach the position he currently possesses. Even though he is just an ordinary official mage, he can almost be considered a lower-level presence among the mage community. But compared to the vast majority of people in this world, he is still enough to be called an adult at this moment. As long as he is willing to leave Dalaran, some people will respect him as a guest of honor, but that is not the life he wants. The act of finding a noble lord and serving him casually would be too cheap for him. Chapter 2. The Purpose of the Great Mage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the Violet Castle, in a room that no one can find, this is where Roy is now. After bringing himself here, the few Kenrito magic guards left. Perhaps no one was restricting Roy's stay, but Roy knew very well that all he could do at this moment was wait. As the most core area of Dalaran, the Violet Castle is filled with various barriers and magical devices. Roy believes that from the moment he entered this area, he was already looked down upon by people. If it weren't for the camouflage ability that comes through time travel, even the existence at the level of Kil'jaeden couldn't penetrate. Perhaps his demonic identity would have been discovered long ago. Not letting Roy wait too long, the purple magical radiance shone in the room, accompanied by an elderly wizard. Whether it was the luxurious robe, the long, carefully crafted beard, or the staff adorned with precious gemstones, they were all telling Roy about the identity of the person in front of him. The chief wizard of the magical kingdom of Dalaran, the leader of Kenrito, the owner of the Violet Castle, and the great wizard Antonidas. If he were to discover his demonic identity, it would be difficult to deal with. It's not that Roy is so afraid of the power possessed by this human mage. After all, his current self and his newly arrived self can be said to be completely different. Perhaps from the perspective of a mage, he is just a formal mage, but his combat abilities are not comparable to those of ordinary people. Welcome to Violet Castle, child. Good day, esteemed Lord Antonidas. After bowing slightly, Roy followed the other person's request and sat down. Looking at the humble appearance of the young man in front of him, Antonidas nodded in satisfaction. As he waved his hand, a cup of concentrated flower tea appeared on the small table next to Roy. It was at this moment that the great wizard finally spoke again. How much do you know about Stormwind City, Roy? Not much, Your Excellency Antonidas. In response, Roy put down the teacup in his hand and continued, I am a native of Lordaeron. If it weren't for Your Excellency Kel'Thuzad's favor, I might not have appeared in Dalaran. Roy probably knows what Antonidas is planning to do. In the past, in order to combat the increasingly serious invasion of demons, the wizards of the High Elves signed a secret agreement with the Magora's Council, which ruled Dalaran at that time. With the support of the methods provided by the higher elves, the mages of the Magora's council gathered all their magical powers onto one person and referred to him as the Guardian. At the same time, both sides jointly constructed an organization to supervise the Guardian. Perhaps because the original location was the Tiresfall Forest, this organization was also known as the Tiresfall Council. As time passed, the Tiresfall Council found it increasingly difficult to restrain the powerful Guardians, and the previous Guardian, Aegwin, transmitted his Guardian power to his son, who was known as the last Guardian of Medivh. Now, Medivh, who has already reached adulthood, is residing in Karazhan, the kingdom of Azeroth with Stormwind as its core. Dalaran has always been plotting against the scriptures and various magical knowledge hidden within Karazhan, collected by the Guardians. Dalaran's spies have never stopped infiltrating the tower, but it is impossible to hide their thoughts in front of the powerful Guardians. Moreover, the current Guardian is not just a simple Guardian, but also harbors a more powerful presence within him, which is the leader of the Burning Legion. The Dark Titan Sargeras. Perhaps the previous infiltrator had already died, so Antonidas approached him. He was preparing to infiltrate Karazhan. To be honest, this is not a good task, even if the person controlling that body at the moment is Roy's true boss, or in other words, it is precisely because the person controlling that body is his own boss that this is not a good task. Who knows if the Dark Titan will discover his hidden little secret. Instead of probing the gifts given to him by the other party, it's better to consider how to avoid this mission. He currently lacks the ability to confront the Dark Titan. Don't underestimate yourself, young Roy. You have unparalleled talent, but it requires a more suitable stage to showcase it. Antonidas still wore a kind smile on his face, like an old grandfather living next door. Perhaps in the past, he also used this method to induce those mages to infiltrate Stormwind or even Karazhan. Roy's thoughts were still unfolding, and Antonidas could be considered to have expressed his purpose. For a long time, there has been a lack of stable connection between Dalaran and the Stormwind Mage Association. Therefore, we need to send a mage with sufficient weight to the Stormwind Mage Association. After discussion with the council, you are the best choice. No, Master Antonidas, I don't think I am capable of fulfilling this responsibility. There is a more outstanding presence among my peers, and perhaps Khadgar can successfully complete this task. He has a talent in this area. At this point, Roy paused for a moment, carefully watching Antonidas' expression. When he saw the contemplative expression on the other person's face, Roy understood that he had successfully avoided the crisis. However, it's not enough to completely divert the other person's attention, so Roy needs to put in a little more effort. Additionally, recently Your Excellency Kel'Thuzad has requested that I participate in his experiment. Please forgive me for rejecting your invitation, Master Antonidas. Kel'Thuzad. Forget it, I will consider your suggestion, young Roy. Since you have something else to do, let's leave first. Yes, Your Excellency Antonidas. After the words fell, Roy slowly exited the room. Then, led by two magical guards waiting at the door, Roy left Violet Castle and returned to the streets of Dalaran. Without any hesitation, at this moment, Roy walked straight towards the magic tower of Kel'Thuzad, perhaps needing some protection from this cheap master this time. After all, Antonidas is not an easy person to deal with. If he finds out that what he says is purely a lie, he will definitely make himself unable to bear it. Chapter 3. Orcs Attack. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After leaving the Violet Castle, Roy arrived at the magical tower of Kel'Thuzad. He had not yet truly embarked on the path of darkness, and at least for now, he appeared to be a solitary but not too difficult person to get along with. You're late. Earlier, Lord Antonidas summoned me. Faced with Kel'Thuzad's words, Roy responded slightly casually. Ultimately, Kel'Thuzad did not call on Roy to assist him in completing those experiments. As long as Roy did not go to the special area within his magic tower, he would not even pay too much attention to Roy's existence. However, today's Kel'Thuzad's words seem a bit excessive. Antonidas. What did he ask you to go over and do? He wants me to represent him at the Stormwind Mage Association, at least on the surface. So how do you respond to him? Listening to Roy's words, even Kel'Thuzad's face couldn't help but show a faint curiosity. For the vast majority of mages, although this task requires leaving Dalaran, it can definitely be considered a good thing. After all, going to the Stormwind Mage Association is just a superficial matter, and the real reason Dalaran sent people over is to gain the knowledge of the Guardian Medivh. The Stormwind Mage Association is just a springboard. I refused. After all, the Guardian or something is still too far away from me as an ordinary mage. A wise choice. As the words fell, Kel'Thuzad stopped speaking, while Roy casually pulled out a few magic books from the bookshelf and then walked towards a training ground inside the mage's tower. This is the norm in Roy's life, but he doesn't have much interest in learning these spells. All he needs is just a model of the spells. Standing in the training ground, Roy raised his hand slightly and a dark purple glow appeared in his hand, but it was not the power of shadows. Since the beginning of his journey, Roy has mastered a special power, a power echoing from a higher and deeper realm called the Void Realm. Perhaps at the beginning, this power could not be compared to the powers of evil possessed by Roy, who had traveled through time to become a demon, but as time passed, this power became increasingly powerful. The potential it has revealed far exceeds any power that Roy has ever seen, and not only that, its compatibility with the power of this world is even more astonishing. This is his greatest confidence, and also the lifeboat he disembarked from before the complete sinking of the large ship called the Burning Legion. As long as he opens it up, his future will definitely be completely changed. According to the magic model in memory, the energy began to change, and a beautiful, angular dark ice crystal appeared in front of Roy. The next moment, the ice crystal collided directly with a nearby target. In an instant, the ice crystals splattered everywhere, and anything that came into contact with the spiritual ice crystals began to condense. Compared to ordinary ice arrow, this ice arrow mixed with spiritual energy exhibits stronger power and effects. However, even now, it cannot be used multiple times with such powerful spells. Perhaps the reservoir inside his body used to store spiritual energy is large enough, but its spiritual energy storage is not large and its recovery speed is not so fast. It is precisely because of this that Roy cannot give up on the traditional spell system. Before finding a way to accelerate spiritual energy recovery, he still needs to rely on these traditional skills to maintain his combat effectiveness. This is a world full of crises. Even though he is now somewhat powerful, he is nothing in front of those truly strong people. Moreover, getting rid of the Legion is not an easy task. For traitors, the Legion has always been strict and cruel. To achieve this, either he can always hide or he has enough powerful power. Undoubtedly, compared to hiding, acquiring powerful power is undoubtedly more meaningful. It is impossible for him to hide like this for several years or even decades later. When Roy walked out of the magic tower, it wasn't too late because he needed to report the situation to the Legion regularly, so Roy needed to temporarily leave Dalaran. If we were to make contact in this city, who knows if we would be targeted by those hunting dogs. At least for now, Roy doesn't want to expose himself. Dalaran stands to the northwest of the Hillsbrad Hills, and walking northeast leads to Auckland. The Hillsbrad Hills and even the Silver Pine Forest are the territories of the largest human country, Lordaeron. Roy occupied the home of this body owner in Nanhai Town, not far from Dalaran. Although he didn't have many family members, this guy still loved to stay in Nanhai Town. After all, that is his hometown. Even in this world, people still have homesickness, but for Roy, this is just an excuse. reading www.uukaungshu.net. After leaving Dalaran's surveillance range, spiritual energy began to surge, and a crack appeared in front of Roy. Looking through the cracks, the destination is a red land located in Draenor, although it has not yet been shattered by Nizul's actions, and even the Dark Gate has not been opened. Due to the abuse of evil powers, Draenor's land has become barren and gradually dying, and this environment is not uncommon in Draenor today. If you want to find a place where you can safely contact the Legion, then Delano is undoubtedly a better choice. Spirituality allows Roy to shuttle between 2 points with coordinates, without considering every world, especially the isolation mechanism of a world like Azeroth with special protection. If there is a better place to connect with the Legion, this is undoubtedly the best choice. After crossing the crack, Roy descended on Draenor. However, just as he landed, the deafening sound of war drums echoed in his ears. Looking sideways, a group of orcs were riding war wolves and galloping on the ground. They are chasing a team, which is a Draenei team. Perhaps Kil'jaeden would be interested in these guys, after all, they were once of the same race. In his view, these people betrayed him under the leadership of the Prophet Vion. If possible, Roy would like to leave here directly, but given the current situation, he probably won't be able to leave easily. A staff suddenly appeared in Roy's hand, and before these orcs took action, Roy planned to take action first. The power of frost converged at the tip of the staff, and in the next moment, a blizzard of ice crystals fell from the sky like a sharp blade, bombarding between the Draenei and orcs. Chapter 4. The Decision of the Garrison Officer. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The sudden fall of an ice cone brought frost comfort to this scorching land, and also temporarily stopped the orc wolf cavalry racing recklessly in the wilderness. This is a spell that they are not familiar with, a completely different skill from elemental spells and dark magic mastered by sorcerers. Although the demonic blood originating from Manolos plunged these orcs into madness, the wolf cavalry leader still maintained some rationality and raised his hand to signal his companions to temporarily stop their steps. Looking ahead, the target was an existence that had never been seen before, with a body and limbs similar to theirs, dressed in slightly gorgeous violet clothing. At this moment, the crystal on his staff was shining brightly, indicating that this spell was his masterpiece. However, how could one person possibly stop the footsteps of the wolf cavalry? Wolf cavalry, attack. Watching the wolf cavalry take action again, the Draenei, who had thought they could take a short rest, panicked again. As the leader of this team, a hint of determination appeared on the face of the young judge holding a war hammer. Just like her predecessors and colleagues, as a garrison officer, she is also willing to sacrifice her life for her own people. Although I don't know where the donor came from, at least for now, he stands on one side with them. At this moment, a hint of hope appeared in her eyes. Compatriots, move in the direction of that stranger, I'll cut off the rear. A golden holy light appeared around the garrison officer, and she stared at the orcs ahead as she gripped the two-handed battle hammer with purple crystal as its head. The divine light blessed by Neru spread out from her center, and in an instant, the earth began to burn fiercely. However, how can such skills alone withstand these wild orcs? To protect her tribe, she needs even stronger strength. Whether it's the holy light or the holy Neru, no matter who, she hopes someone can respond to her call. It was at this moment that a strange and wise voice suddenly echoed in her mind. So, are you willing to pay a small price to gain power? For some reason, upon hearing this sentence, the garrison officer turned his head slightly to look behind. The tribe has arrived at the location of the stranger, who is looking at her with a friendly expression on his face. A golden radiance emerged from the man's hand, and the divine aura of the blade of light pierced straight through the bodies of the beasts attacking from the flank. However, a frontal enemy is imminent. No matter who you are, as long as you give me the power to protect my tribe, I am willing to pay any price. The resolute words were uttered from the mouth of the garrison officer, but no response was received in even one word, as if they had been hallucinated before. But the next moment, a special force entered her body. Not the power of the holy light, but it can perfectly blend with the power of the holy light, even unleashing stronger effects from the power she possesses. Vaguely, a link connects her to the existence that gives her this power, and that existence is standing behind her at this moment. Die, little girl. The sharp blade of the wolf cavalry rushed towards her doorstep with a piercing sound, but the guard no longer had any trace of confusion or doubt. Facing the attacking blade, she swung her hammer forward. The pale golden shield blocked the wolf cavalry's blow, while her hammer directly shattered the head of the wolf in front of her, and then struck the orc who had fallen from the wolf with even greater force. This is just the beginning. With the blessing of that power, the female garrison officer unleashed far greater power than ever before. In the rear, Roy showed a thoughtful expression as he watched the battle. Just now, he heard the call of the somewhat familiar guard, and then he gave the other party some spiritual power. And this is the beginning of change. In Roy's perception, the guard was already associated with his psychic pool, and if that's all, it's not enough to shock Roy. With the explosion of her protective heart, a shock erupted in the savings pool, and since then, the speed of spiritual energy recovery suddenly increased, as if the emotions of the guard had turned into echoes in the spiritual pool. The question that had been confusing Roy for a long time finally had an answer at this moment. He finally found a way to accelerate the speed of spiritual energy recovery. The battle is coming to an end, and perhaps the orcs who drank demon blood are very powerful, but with the support of Roy and the blessing of spiritual power, the garrison officers are even stronger. After the battle ended, the garrison officer walked non-stop towards Roy's location. I am Iroh, the garrison officer of Delaney. Thank you for your assistance, stranger. If it weren't for your help. It's nothing, after all, you also paid the price, isn't it? The guard fell into silence, and indeed, as she had anticipated, the force came from this stranger. However, as he turned his head to look at the surviving members of his tribe, the fear that gradually emerged in his heart was gradually resolutely eradicated. Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net. If it weren't for this power, if it weren't for his arrival, even with the protection of the holy light, they would undoubtedly die. Moreover, in the battle just now, this stranger also used the power of the holy light, and it is impossible for an evil person to control this power. This is what she has always believed in and what she sees as reality. So, the cost. The hand of fate drives everything, and one day, you will know these things, but that's not now. Now, you have more important things to do. Roy's body gradually began to blur, as if a phantom was about to disappear from the mirror. When the golden debris dissipated into the air, Iroh woke up like a dream. On the nearby mountain peak, Roy watched the departure of the Draenei team. Perhaps it was just a chance encounter, but its fate was already predetermined. After discovering that emotions could resonate in the sea of void belonging to Roy, thereby stimulating more spiritual energy, Roy had already found his own path forward. He needs his own organization, legion, or sect, and he needs to collect people's emotions in order to restore or even make his spiritual power stronger. Until one day, he will be among the stars. However, before that, he needs to report his work situation to his current temporary leader. The ripples of evil energy gradually revealed, and in front of Roy, the phantom of the demon appeared on the land slightly disguised by spiritual energy. This is the intelligence I have recently collected about Dalaran and the human kingdom, my master. Without saying much, it was almost as soon as Roy's words fell, the fraudster's red body disappeared in front of Roy. Chapter 5. Changes in the Mind. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a jungle in Shadow Moon Valley, the team led by Iriel once again arrived here. Even though Draenor's land was gradually dying over time, it was not as complete as death. At least for now, there are still traces of life on this land, and these plants are still strong and alive. Under the night, they provide some cover for these fleeing Draenei people. Leaning under a big tree, Iriel had a lot of thoughts. The events of the day lingered in her mind, and even when she closed her eyes, what caught her eye was still the scene of that time, the peculiar man, and that incredibly powerful force that seems to be able to change everything. The guard who led her into the path of the guard once told her that those who believed in the holy light would surely be able to protect everything, but the daytime battles reminded her. Perhaps the power of the holy light is not as powerful as that. This is an extremely blasphemous idea, but after being in such a desperate situation and receiving the support of that special force, this idea has already been engraved in her mind. The guard lowered her head and looked at her palm. A faint golden light appeared in her hand, a holy light. At this moment it was still so warm and reassuring. However, it is no longer as pure as it used to be. Gradually, a hint of fatigue echoed in the consciousness of the guard, and she, relying on the big tree, fell into a deep sleep like a child. "Welcome to my field, Garrison officer." Looking at the guard ahead, Roy spoke in a slightly serious tone. However, the guard was not in a hurry to respond to the man's words. At this moment, she was looking at this unfamiliar world. This is an ordinary-looking building with a style different from any house she has ever seen. Looking out through the window, 2 bright moons quietly hang on the sky. Under the moonlight, a peaceful atmosphere echoes on the lush green earth. Roy was not in a hurry to awaken the guard, rather, immersing him in this scene was also part of the entire plan. If what Roy has learned the most in the Burning Legion is how to lure someone off their original path and into corruption. Before this, he had already done the same thing in several worlds, but this time everything he did was no longer for the Legion, but for himself. Even though they are on different planets, the link between Iroh and himself remains stable, and with this link, Roy can accomplish many things. Contact her anytime, anywhere, and observe her surroundings through her perspective. These are just the most basic usage. With the help of links, Roy can subtly influence the target. With different levels of investment, he can either become Roy's servant unconsciously or directly use powerful spiritual power to break through his thinking and transform it. This is what Roy is currently doing, but because the spiritual power he currently possesses is still insufficient, and as a demon, Roy also enjoys the feeling of guiding people to fall. That's why Roy chose the more secure former. Her thoughts came to a sudden halt, and the guard, who should have died, withdrew her gaze from the window. At this moment, she looked at the person who had been thinking about how to face it before. She is a devout believer, at least before this incident, she thought so. However, even though the power of the holy light still responds to her call, can she really be called devout now? There's no need to doubt or worry. Roy's voice suddenly sounded, and at that moment, what Iroh saw in the man's eyes was a shred of wisdom and depth. The man's words continued to speak out. The power of the holy light is still responding to you, which proves that your path is correct, and besides. As a garrison officer, your responsibility is to protect your own people, even if other forces are used, it is still to better fulfill your responsibilities, isn't it? But Iroh, whose mind was shattered, still wanted to defend herself, but Roy's words completely interrupted her thoughts. Don't defend yourself anymore. You're not as devout as you think. In your hands, the holy light is just a tool, that's all. No, I've never thought of it that way. Why don't you dare to face everything that has already happened calmly? The violet glow appeared in Roy's hand, and it fell on Iroh. In an instant, the fatigue was swept away, and even the damage left in the battle was restored at this moment. And this is not what Iroh cares about. What really mattered to her was the reassuring and warm feeling echoing within this radiance, which was no different from the holy light. Moreover, the holy light cheered and jumped with the arrival of this power. Perhaps this is also a manifestation of the holy light. Suddenly, the idea of UU reading www.uukangshu.net came to the mind of the garrison officer, and it never disappeared. Coincidentally, Roy's seductive voice echoed once again like the voice of the most beautiful thing in the world by Iroh's ear. Think about it, if you could have mastered this power earlier, perhaps those people wouldn't have died on the road of escape. If your race could wield this power, perhaps those brutal invaders would not easily start a war, and even the fate of your tribe would fundamentally change. This is a gift from fate, a gift from the highest heaven, a gift from the void, a seventh source that echoes outside of this world, and now, you will become a pioneer on this path. With Roy's words, everything Iroh saw was changing. She saw the tribe defeat the Orcs and find a place to rest. Under her leadership, they even returned to their lost homeland, a land called Agus, which was like a fairy tale to their generation. This is the supreme glory, and now, you will have the opportunity to be among them. The garrison officer did not give any answer, but his already shaken heart seemed to have made a decision. Roy understood that when a person begins to waver, it is the beginning of their transformation. Perhaps once she was extremely devout, but now she is moving further and further on the path of apostates. Satisfied, Roy disconnected the link, and at that moment, he quietly left the dream of the garrison officer. Tonight, he has already given the other party enough stimulation. It's time for her to rest well. One day, fate will push this young man in front of her. Roy knew that day was not far away. Chapter 6. Beats the Small and the Old. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dalaran Mage Training Ground, where countless mages gather. From members of the Council of Kento like Antonidas, to newly introduced formal mages like Roy, you can find them all here. In order to stimulate the progress of Dalaran mages, a special trial is held every year for all those who have reached the level of formal mages. It involves numerous projects, but the most important aspect is practical testing. After all, only those who can calmly think in any situation and use the appropriate magic at the right time can be called qualified mages. According to the different training results, the ranking of each mage will change, and at the same time, the resources he can obtain from this city will also change. To be honest, Roy is not interested in such a ranking. It's not that he doesn't have the ability to achieve better results, but mainly because he didn't really want to expose himself before. But now it's different. From Iroh, he discovered another path to strength, and for this, he needed more believers to incorporate more people's emotions into the sea of emptiness. And next is a huge opportunity. According to Roy's estimation, the Dark Gate will soon open, and the era of conflict belonging to Azeroth will begin completely with the arrival of the Orcs. In such disputes, people often need more spiritual support, and it would be even better if this support could provide them with stronger strength. Roy was not prepared to miss out on this big event, let alone be swept away into the vortex. Hey, let's see who it is. Isn't this Roy the last one among us to step into the official mage realm? Why, are you such a useless person prepared to be properly tortured? The sudden words interrupted Roy's thoughts, and he looked sideways to see a man wearing a luxurious robe and holding a special staff. Roy remembers this person, who was among the same group of mage apprentices as himself entering Dalaran. The difference was that the other party was a nobleman from Lordaeron, and if Roy had not received some funding, it would have been difficult for him to complete his studies and become a formal mage. At the beginning of the fight, this guy looked down on him, and he and his followers were also constantly looking for opportunities to cause trouble for themselves. At that time, Roy chose to hide his sharpness and active in this city as an ordinary mage, but now it's different. Who is the trash talking about? Waste says. Before he could finish speaking, the official mage named Kakis suddenly stopped speaking. He realized something, he didn't intend to entangle himself too much with this guy anymore. Perhaps this sharp-tongued guy could gain some advantage in language, but if it were in real combat, he would definitely be able to defeat him. After all, he is just a first-level mage, but he has already reached the peak of the second level and is currently advancing to the third level. After Antonidas finished speaking the complicated words, Kakis raised his hand without hesitation. Your Excellency, I request to challenge the first-level mage Roy. The words of the second-level mage caught the attention of many people present, who were curious about what kind of grudges would make a young man who could almost be called a third-level mage challenge a first-level mage. Also, who is Roy? Antonidas did not respond in a hurry, and the elderly wizard turned his head slightly to his colleague on one side. From Kel'Thuzad's face, he did not see any unnecessary expression, as if this matter had nothing to do with him, or perhaps because he believed that his disciple could challenge the second-level peak in one session. Since that's the case, he doesn't need to consider whether to consider the face of his colleagues. Approved. As soon as Antonidas finished speaking, Cacus immediately activated his flash spell without hesitation. In an instant, his figure appeared in the central arena. The young, self-proclaimed wizard with extraordinary talent glanced down at Roy with disdainful eyes. The people around couldn't help but look at Roy, the ordinary magician. They didn't have much pity, and at this moment, only a look of amusement appeared on the faces of the wizards. Mages are concerned about the gossip between the two, and are more concerned about whether this young first-order mage is willing to respond to this invitation. If he doesn't respond, it's not just him, even his mentor will be ashamed. Even mages despise cowardly people. Roy didn't speak, and in the next moment, he also used a flash technique to shift, standing opposite Cacus as if ignoring his opponent. Damn it! Roy's attitude made Cacus extremely unhappy. Without a moment's hesitation, as the referee announced the start of the game, the element of fire gathered at the tip of his staff. As he swung his wand, a scorching fireball rushed straight towards Roy. Guided by the spiritual power attached to Cacus, the fireball accurately hit Roy's face. If this face is directly burned to pieces, then I won't have to see that so-called rotten face again. Even though he is just a commoner with mediocre talent, he dares to be so arrogant in front of himself, who is a nobleman and destined to inherit the position of count in the future. This is punishment. He couldn't wait to see the astonishment on this guy's face, but when he looked at him again, what caught his eye was still the indifference and a faint hint of mockery. How dare this guy underestimate himself? This can't be tolerated. The magic of Cacus was rapidly consumed, and an even larger fireball appeared in front of him. This was a more advanced spell than fireball magic, and only mages who reached the second level had the opportunity to learn the spell. Flame explosion. Go to hell with me. A fireball the size of a basin rushed straight towards Roy, and it was at this moment that a faint frost radiance appeared in his left and right hands, and the ice gun technique was released at this moment. The first ice gun accurately destroyed the structure of fireball, while the second one went straight through flame blast and hit Cacus's body. Just a few millimeters away from his heart, a wave of magic destroyed the ice gun. Looking towards the direction of the magical wave, a slightly elderly mage wearing a purple robe stood tall, staring at Roy with an angry expression. What? Do you also want to dance like this useless person? Pride is not a personality that a mage should have, let me teach you a good lesson. I'll wait and see. Chapter 7. Rising Nova. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I'll wait and see. Faced with the middle-aged wizard blowing his beard and staring at his eyes, Roy did not show any fear, even though the wizard had already jumped into the field and was driving his magic to exert pressure. This made the onlookers put aside their attitude of enjoying themselves, and they naturally knew exactly what this scene meant. Either this guy has the power not weaker than this mage, or he has the talent to ignore the pressure of high-level professionals. Regardless of which point it is, it can be said that it is shocking to the world. That was a 5th-level wizard, with only one step away from the legendary 6th level. If this wizard from a commoner could reach the 5th level at such an age, his talent would already be comparable to the most powerful wizards in human history. If he can ignore the pressure of high-level professionals, then he will inevitably have a place in the field of mainland diplomacy. No matter which country, such talents are needed. As for the truth after this battle is over, everything will definitely be revealed. Facing the incoming old wizard, Roy gave him a slightly serious glance, but only for that. As a demon, the race he belongs to is inherently powerful, and he has been in this position for countless years. If it weren't for not being able to use those powers to avoid exposure, Roy would be able to tear this 5th-level mage to pieces in a moment. The higher the stage, the greater the gap between them, and according to Azeroth's class level division, Roy can be considered a 6th level, legendary level demon. Flames appeared around the old wizard, and before the referee announced the start of the game, he had already chosen to take action. The radiance of the arcane spell begins to converge around him, and in the next moment, the flame explosion spell, which should have been used through energy accumulation, will be released directly. This is a magician who cultivates both arcane and flame spells. It is precisely because of this that he was able to directly use the flame explosion spell after using one of the signature spells of arcane mages, the calm and leisure spell. And Roy, on the other hand, did not feel intimidated by this. Even if he only used the power of a mage, he did not consider this person to be his opponent. Whether it's evil energy, arcane and elemental power, these are not Roy's true trumps. Since the awakening of that power, his true trump card has been only one, which is psychic power. The power from another world has infinite potential and can manifest any form of power in the world Azeroth resides in according to Roy's ideas. It is precisely because of this that when facing Iril, Roy was able to use the power of the holy light, which was not the true holy light, but a simulated holy light made from spiritual energy. And now, it's time to bring spiritual spells into the eyes of the indigenous people in this world. A dark light appeared in Roy's hand, and an ice cone gradually appeared with the light. At this moment, not only the mages watching, but even Antonidas on the high platform couldn't help but turn his gaze to Roy who was casting spells. The spell Roy is casting has almost the same model as the ice arrow, but the difference is that the model is no longer composed of pure ice forces, but of ice and shadow forces converging in one place. This is undoubtedly the most dangerous attempt, and if this spell can be successfully cast, the previous question will be immediately concluded. In front of everyone's eyes, the black ice arrow was released and faced with the unstoppable flame explosion technique. The black ice arrow collided with it, and then a strong wave of magic exploded with the collision of the two incompatible elements of water and fire. However, as the wave of magic dissipated, several ice guns hidden in the dark had already crossed the energy wave and hit the old wizard's magical shield. At this moment, the whole room fell silent. Any wise and knowledgeable wizard understands how many skills are contained in a seemingly simple spell just now, but this young wizard can easily use such spells. Without a doubt, how could he be called a fool like this? Unlike others, Kel'Thuzad's face actually showed a slight smile. Although this guy is just his nominal disciple and most of the time they do their own things, at least he is his own disciple, a member of his own lineage. Moreover, the impulsive old wizard was an assistant to someone who did not deal with Kel'Thuzad. Seeing this scene, he must have been extremely happy, so much so that he couldn't help but consider whether to apply for better treatment for his cheap disciple. In the field, Roy's movements did not stop. After flashing, his figure appeared in front of the old wizard. While other mages were pondering what this guy was going to do, Roy had already picked up his staff and knocked at the old wizard. Even with decades of experience, how could an old mage have seen such a formation and fought in such a way? He narrowly avoided Roy's first strike, but the second strike was unavoidable. As the staff and shield made close contact, brilliant ice blooms burst out, and then a blazing flame enveloped the old wizard. A series of blows continued as Roy's steps followed a certain pattern, and from beginning to end, the old wizard who was provoked never landed. Until the final blow. What's going on? It's not arrogant anymore. Facing the young man's sneering expression, the old mage only felt that blush. It was him who stood up, and now it is also him who has been defeated. In this situation, what does he have to say? No matter what he says, it's all self-deprecating. Since that's the case, he might as well remain silent. As for revenge, from the moment the special frost spell was completed, the old wizard realized that he had lost the opportunity. Even with that spell alone, he could gain the favor of Antonidas, not to mention that he had been a disciple of Kel'Thuzad before that. That's a member of the Kenrito 6-member council, a presence he can't afford to provoke. At this moment, he couldn't help but resent his disciple. If it weren't for him causing trouble, how could he have been so embarrassed? The old wizard who stood up didn't say anything and left the arena in a disheveled manner, walking straight towards his laboratory. He no longer has the face to continue staying here. The winner is Roy. After a long silence, the referee finally announced the final result. Without a doubt, this is the beginning of a new era, where a new star has risen. And all they can do is witness this new star taking steps towards the future. When did you break through Chapter 8? You are listening at novelfull.audio. When did it break through? Just as Roy sat down, such words came from not far away. Several hours have passed since the farce-like match, and now is the halftime for this tournament. The speaker was Kel'Thuzad, and this outsider from the group of 6 in Kent still had an indifferent expression, even though Roy's displayed skills surprised him. That is not something that a first-level mage can master, let alone that he has already defeated a 5th-level mage. It is inappropriate to call him a first-order mage now. Faced with Kel'Thuzad's question, Roy responded without much thought. I also asked you some questions related to promotion before. Have you forgotten, my teacher? After a moment of silence, Kel'Thuzad pondered for a moment and realized that this guy had not actually lied. Not only did he get promoted from 1st to 2nd rank, but he also asked himself about some of the necessary conditions for promotion afterwards. However, at that time, he was immersed in an experiment, so he only threw away a book related to it. If relying solely on that book can achieve advancement and reach the 5th level, then this person's talent is truly terrifying. Undoubtedly, with such talent, he can no longer be called a genius. He should be called a genius, not to mention a human. Even among elves, there are probably very few geniuses of this level. This is a monster. Forget it, being able to reach the 5th level indicates that you do have talent in this area. Perhaps one day in the future, you will be able to challenge legendary or even higher fields. As he spoke, Kel'Thuzad turned to look out the window. For him, having such an apprentice was not a bad thing. If he could continue to grow, there was no doubt that he could become a member of the Council of 6 in Kenya. In addition, he carries his own imprint. At that time, his actions within Dalaran will be more unobstructed. He is not very interested in power, but in a place like Dalaran, power is something he has to master because it relates to the resource quotas he can obtain. Having mastered several projects, he needs sufficient resources to support his experiments, and for this, he needs high authority. It is precisely because of this that he became a member of the Council of 6 in Kenrido. Work hard and strive to obtain more resources in this competition. Since your talent and strength have been exposed, don't think about hiding anything anymore. This world does not lack geniuses. If there is not enough strength, even geniuses will eventually fall, so go and become stronger. Thank you for your guidance, Master. Listening to Kel'Thuzad's words, Roy nodded. To be honest, at least for now, there is a stark contrast between the Kel'Thuzad in his eyes and the one in his memory. Although somewhat paranoid, he now looks at least like a normal person. For those who are related to him, this one will also show some concern, but this great wizard has a strong desire for magic skills. Whether it is work or in his spare time, he is always studying things related to it. Perhaps it was this curiosity that led Kenrido, one of the 6 members of the council, to ultimately embark on the path of the curse and become a member of the Scourge Legion. Listening to Roy's words, the Archmage nodded and then turned to walk towards the door. Just a few minutes ago, Antonidas, as the leader of the 6-member council, initiated a communication with other council members in Dalaran. Naturally, as a member of the 6-member parliament, Kel'Thuzad needs to respond to this. As for what will be discussed in the 6-member council. Although Roy was curious, he also understood that perhaps he might be mentioned in the meeting, but that was just a sideline in the meeting. Unless he really showed enough power to rival legendary-level powerhouses, his current self in the eyes of these great mages was only a young person who could catch their eye slightly. That's all. Moreover, How could Roy be completely unaware of what they wanted to discuss? To the south of the Eastern Kingdom, in the area known as the Land of Curse in later times, there are waves of darkness and evil energy echoing. The Guardian Medivh, controlled by the leader of the Burning Legion, Sargeras, has already taken action. Through contact with Gul'dan, the two will cast spells simultaneously in Draenor and Azeroth to open the door of the Dark Gate, which is enough to connect the two worlds. This level of magic, no matter how much it is disguised, cannot be ignored by anyone. After all, even Roy has already noticed it, let alone the great wizards of Kenrido. However, Roy is not worried about this. Rather, he hopes that the Orcs' gaze can be drawn to Azeroth, so that his actions in Draenor can proceed smoothly. UU reading www.uukeungshu.net. As for the upcoming competition, Roy only plans to choose a few more 5th level mages as his opponents in exchange for high enough points, and as for facing those legendary level mages, that's okay, he's already shining enough. At least before the war started, Roy had no intention of revealing legendary power. Moreover, he needed time to further master spiritual power, and now he needs to continue to settle down. After lunch, Roy was not in a hurry to go to the venue. He was well aware that even if he had gone, he would not have received any more competition invitations. Moreover, even if he took the initiative to challenge his colleagues, they would probably have decisively refused. Today is just the first day, and only those low-level mages would choose to participate in the competition today. For Roy now, it is meaningless to peck at these guys. Moreover, although the rules established by Dalaran do not limit the behavior of high-level mages to mow the grass and score among low-level mage groups, there is a special calculation method that is being improved almost every year regarding how many points can be obtained after each competition. The rewards that high-level mages can earn when fighting low-level mages can only be considered as mosquito legs, and they cannot even compare to the number of points they can earn after defeating other mages of the same level. Since that's the case, who would choose to fight against those low-level mages? Roy, who has been urgently recognized as a 5th level mage, also believes the same. After leaving the restaurant, Roy returned home to the less luxurious rental apartment located on the outskirts of Dalaran. Before the advanced mages start participating in the competition, Roy plans to focus his energy on Irol's work. Chapter 9. Holy Light, Respond to Me. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Roy, lying in bed, closed his eyes and the darkness slowly dissipated. In the next moment, his gaze fell on the distant land of Delano. After crossing the southern region of the Tannin jungle, she and the entire team finally reached the edge of Shadow Moon Valley. Compared to the completely barren Tannin jungle, Shadow Moon Valley can still see some greenery, but the desolation is still spreading. This land is dying, but Irol is powerless. The power of the holy light may heal people's wounds, but it will never heal this land. All they can do is watch as this land slowly dies, that's all. Suddenly, the familiar footsteps of the wolf sounded, and without a moment's hesitation, Irol, who was on alert, immediately commanded the tribe to hide in the not-so-tall forest. Perhaps before this, Irol would have been worried about whether the wolf's keen sense of smell would detect his group, but this has been confirmed on the way out of the Tannian jungle. As Irol's mind moved, a thin energy network spread out around her and covered the entire area. This is the power bestowed upon her and her team by the man who saved them on that day, and the power from her dream. It is under the protection of this power that she and this team can safely return to Shadow Moon Valley. A team of Orc Wolf cavalry marched forward, and even Irol couldn't help but furrow his brows due to its massive size. There was no other reason, and the direction of this wolf cavalry's advance was familiar to Irol. It was the direction of Ambury village, where she lived from a young age until she became a garrison officer and went to Shotrath for further studies. She still remembers that day. With her sister's blessings, she arrived at Shotrath. After several years of training, she had become a qualified garrison officer. Just as she planned how to return to Shadow Moon Valley and unleash her power, the Orc invasion began. At that time, she was not in Shotrath. Due to a mission, she arrived at the Tanan jungle in the village where her fellow countrymen were currently living, following her. And now, she has returned to Shadow Moon Valley. Don't have anything to do, Sister Samara. Since that's the case, why not intercept this wolf cavalry? Is that you? Suddenly, the sound echoing in her ear shook Irol's slightly depressed spirit. The female guard looked around to see if other members of her tribe could hear her words. In the end, she understood that only she could hear that words, just as he said, she was the chosen one. That person didn't tell too much, but from that constant stream of power, Irol could tell that he was watching him at this moment. Irol didn't take any action in a hurry. After looking around, she didn't notice the figure of that person. Don't waste your time, you can't find me, young prophet. In silence, Irol clenched the hammer in his hand, and at that moment, a strong power of the holy light echoed around Irol. Even the surrounding kin couldn't help but be shocked by this scene, let alone the orc wolf cavalry. They never thought that there was a Draenei team hidden in such a close area. This is a huge mistake. If it weren't for the other party's active exposure, my team would have been successfully ambushed by the other party. When he saw the leader of the Draenei garrison, a cruel expression appeared on the face of the orc wolf cavalry leader. The power of these Draenei people had indeed been greatly weakened, and now they have sent such an inexperienced young man to ambush. Since that's the case, let's treat it as a small dessert before the war and let him tell this guy what battle is. With this in mind, the orc commander picked up the horn and blew it. As a special melody echoed on the battlefield, the advancing wolf cavalry quickly turned their direction and charged towards the location of Irol. Let me tell you, little girl, your resistance is meaningless in the face of absolute power. Waving his big sword, the captain of the wolf cavalry also threw himself into the battle. This was a battle that did not require any intelligence. Perhaps the number of people between them was almost the same, but there was a huge difference in weapon configuration and personal strength between the two sides. In this Delaney team, the only one who can be considered a threat is this young garrison officer, but what can she do with a whole wolf cavalry team of only one person? Kill everyone else, this garrison officer will catch me alive. Looking at the graceful figure of the guard hidden under the armor, a cruel smile appeared on the ugly face of the wolf cavalry leader. Perhaps there is a completely different aesthetic style between orcs and Draenei, but as a tool for venting desires, this garrison officer is sufficient. He couldn't wait to see the humiliating expression on the guard after he was captured, but she probably wouldn't be able to hold on until that day. Holy power, respond to me. In an instant, the golden light was shining brightly, and the bone armor of energy appeared behind Irol. Along with it came feathers carved by the most skilled sculptor. At this moment, Irol was like a deity falling from the sky, facing the incoming wolf cavalry, decisively waving her hammer. The golden storm spread around Irol, and in an instant, the incoming wolf cavalry were thrown upside down. With the increase of spiritual power, the power of the holy light held by Irol revealed an unprecedented intensity. Under the eternal night of Shadow Moon Valley, a golden radiance rose into the sky. Watching this scene, Roy showed a satisfied expression, truly deserving of having characters with rich and colorful talents in the game. In terms of talent, Irol is beyond words. She only explained a few techniques for using the holy light to her, and then she used it. Not only that, but also like herself, she brought the holy light and spiritual energy together. Even the fearless orcs who drank the blood of demons couldn't help but show fear in this moment, and the golden radiance filled their sight in an instant, like the most ferocious beast completely devouring them who were supposed to be hunters. As the radiance dissipated, only the captain of the wolf cavalry remained standing still, and the red aura echoing around him slowly dissipated. At this moment, he could only see the Draenei garrison officer walking towards him step by step. The majestic killing intent will not deceive anyone. It's hard to imagine that a garrison officer would have such a strong aura. However, at this moment, Irol suddenly knelt down on one knee, and the majestic holy light quietly shattered. Chapter 10. Mountain rain approaches and wind fills the building. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The power of the holy light collapsed so quickly that even Iroh was slightly stunned. Although the holy light was still responding to her call in the previous moment, now she has lost the favor of the holy light. Can we say that we have completely become apostates? Iroh couldn't help but think so, but this was not the time for her to consider these issues. Even without the favor of the holy light, she was not without combat ability. As long as we can defeat the constantly approaching orcs in front of us, then this battle will ultimately be considered successful. Perhaps without the holy light, but the combat skills she has learned have not yet disappeared, and the weapons in her hand are still tightly held. Now, she is not without combat ability. Thinking of this, she tried to stand up, but the deep bone marrow pain prevented her from getting up. Your body is overloaded and unable to move yet. Please wait a moment. The familiar voice echoed in Iroh's ear, and it was precisely at this moment that a warm current echoed within her body. It is the kind of power that she came into contact with on that day and has been using ever since, originating from the power of the voice master, which is completely different from the holy light but can complement each other. Under the washing of that power, the pain in her body gradually faded away, and at this moment, Iroh seemed to feel the call of power once again. It's not the power of the holy light, but the purer special power. It was at this moment that the orcs were already approaching. Go to hell, little girl. As the words fell, the huge blade rushed straight towards Iroh's vital area. The huge blade, which should have been able to be used normally while riding on the seated wolf, is advancing at a speed no less than that of riding, supported by the strong strength of the orcs. Bang! Suddenly, the hammer that had fallen to the ground stood in front of the blade once again. As the orcs looked at the Dreenei's originally sky-blue eyes, what caught their eye was the silver radiance. With that radiance, a special mark that the orcs had never seen appeared on Iroh's forehead. It was at this moment that Iroh stood up again, and under the blessing of the silver-white holy light, the explosive force directly repelled the orc, dragging the still slightly painful body. Iroh stepped forward, and the warhammer mercilessly attacked the orc's head. Who would have thought that before leaving Shotrath, this garrison officer had never truly killed even a humanoid creature? Before leaving Shotrath, she had also considered whether she should choose to enter the sacred path that leans towards healing. And now, she has grown into a true guardian, stepping into the path of punishment and protection. Bang! The sharp blade blocking the front of the warhammer was directly smashed by the warhammer covered with silver holy light, and the warhammer hit the orc's head at an unstoppable speed. Like a watermelon being hit, the head burst open, and foreign objects mixed with red and white splattered everywhere. Are you okay, Iroh? Don't worry, Lisa, I'm fine. Faced with his fellow race walking towards him, Iroh's face squeezed out a smile, but that worry could not be hidden. Standing on the hill, her gaze drifted towards the distance. As the orcs took action, the shadow of war shrouded above the Shadow Moon Valley. After all, there existed a tribe of orcs called the Shadow Moon Clan in the Shadow Moon Valley. When other tribes launched an attack, this tribe could not stop in place. After all, from the beginning, it was the leader of the Shadow Moon Clan, Nazul, who led the tribe to launch an attack on the Dreeneis. Thinking of the people in Anvilai village and her family, Iroh frowned slightly. Gunsmoke echoes between the forests of Shadow Moon Valley, and the orcs are advancing. Relying solely on the Dreenei people of Shadow Moon Valley, it is impossible to resist these fierce orcs. Only the Karabo Temple can withstand the orcs' attack in the entire Shadow Moon Valley, but it is limited to this. If the main force of the orcs arrives, even the Karabo Temple may not be able to stop it. It's not that Iroh thinks too much. After facing these gradually becoming wild orcs, reality no longer allows her to make too many overly optimistic judgments. Hope to catch up with. After a slight sigh, Iroh led the team on a journey again. The Dreeneis possessed various technologies far beyond the imagination of the orcs, which enabled their settlements and cities to be hidden within their observation range. However, at some point, the Orcs found a way to break through these defenses. Now, a large army of Orcs is marching towards the core of the Draenei people in Shadow Moon Valley, the Karabo Temple standing to the east. Anbori village is right in front of the temple, and there is no doubt that if the Orcs want to capture the Karabo Temple, Anbori village will be their necessary path. At this moment, the Draenei people are building a defensive line, and outside the village, a large army of Orcs is gathering here. After quoting the blood of demons, these wild Orcs are eager to break through the Draenei village in front of them. UU reading www.uukangshu.net uses the blood of these Draenei people to clean their sharp edges. If it weren't for the military restrictions, they might have charged up on their own at this moment. Report, a wolf cavalry team has not arrived. Just as the gaze of the Orc commander fell on the front, a messenger approached the commander's side. At this moment, the supervisor's gaze furrowed slightly, indicating that the enemy had ambushed this team from the rear. If he had thought more before drinking devil's blood, but now he wouldn't have thought too much, after all, they have power far beyond the enemy. In this situation, why bother thinking too much? As long as they run over, the defense lines of these Draenei will definitely be broken, just as they did before. It doesn't matter, the governor said, and after a moment's pause, his voice rang out again. Gul'dan demands that we kill as many people as possible, and we must take immediate action. Send orders and start attacking. Obey me. As the words fell, the messenger turned around and left. At dusk, the melodious sound of horns echoes on the earth, and at this moment, the long-awaited Orcs take steps forward. Faced with this unprecedented challenge, the Draenei people looked solemn, and the evacuation work was still ongoing. Now, they must block these Orcs here. Brothers and sisters, prepare for battle. We must stop the Orcs here. The sturdy garrison officers hold their war hammers high, and even in dangerous situations, they must do what they need to do. Since choosing this path, this has been what they have to do.